Today we're starting one of my favorite books, and it's been quite a while since I've read it, so I'm really excited to be starting into this book. It's Artemis Fowl. It's by Ian Colfer. There's a movie coming out, and I think we are well aware of my opinion on how the movie producers are changing the entire plot, the entire character development, the character traits of Artemis Fowl. It just really has my blood boiling. So I'm hoping that yours boils too, and we'll get to compare once you see the movie and I see the movie, and we can just hate on it together. Maybe I'll end up loving it, who knows, but probably not. Alfie doesn't like the idea of the movie changing either. Okay, so Artemis Fowl. We're gonna start with a prologue. Remember, it's always important to read those introductory things to books because they give you important background information that the author wants you to have. Apparently Alfie's really worked up about something this morning. How does one describe Artemis Fowl? Various psychiatrists have tried and failed. The main problem is Artemis's own intelligence. He bamboozles every test thrown at him. He has puzzled the greatest medical minds and sent many of them gibbering to their own hospitals. There is no doubt that Artemis is a child prodigy. But why does someone of such brilliance dedicate himself to criminal activities? This is a question that can be answered by only one person, and he delights in not talking. Perhaps the best way to create an accurate picture of Artemis is to tell the by now famous account of his first villainous adventure. I have put together this report from first-hand interviews with the victims, and as the tale unfolds, you will realize that this was not easy. The story began several years ago at the dawn of the 21st century. Artemis Fowl had devised a plan to restore his family's fortune, a plan that could topple civilizations and plunge the planet into a cross-species war. He was 12 years old at the time. Are you intrigued? It's good. It's really good. Chapter 1 is called The Book. Ho Chi Minh City in the summer. So this is a city in China. Sweltering by anyone's standards, really hot. Needless to say, Artemis Fowl would not have been willing to put up with such discomfort if something extremely important had not been at stake, important to the plan. Sun did not suit Artemis. He did not look well in it. Long hours indoors in front of a computer screen had bleached the glow from his skin. He was white as a vampire and almost as testy in the light of day. I hope this isn't another wild goose chase, Butler, he said, his voice soft and clipped, especially after Cairo. It was a gentle rebuke. They had traveled to Egypt on the word of Butler's informant. No, sir, I'm certain this time. Nguyen is a good man. Droned Artemis, unconvinced. Passerby would have been amazed to hear the large Eurasian man refer to the boy as sir. This was, after all, the third millennium. But this was no ordinary relationship, and these were no ordinary tourists. They were sitting outside a curbside cafe on Dong Kai Street, watching the local teenagers circle the square on mopeds. Nguyen was late, and the pathetic patch of shade provided by the umbrella was doing little to improve Artemis's mood. But this was just his daily pessimism. Beneath the sulk was a spark of hope. Could this trip actually yield results? Would they find the book? It was too much to hope for. A waiter scurried to their table. More tea, sirs? He asked, his head bobbing furiously. Artemis sighed. Spare me the theatrics and sit down. The waiter turned instinctively to Butler, who was, after all, the adult at the table. But, sir, I'm the waiter. Artemis tapped the table for attention. You are wearing handmade loafers, a silk shirt, and 3 gold signet rings. Your English has a tinge of Oxford about it, and your nails have the soft sheen of the recently manicured. You are not a waiter. You are our contact, Nguyen Xuan, and you have adopted this pathetic disguise to discreetly check to see if we have weapons. Nguyen's shoulders sagged. It is true. Amazing. Hardly. A ragged apron does not a waiter make. Yugian sat, pouring some mint tea into a tiny china cup. Let me fill you in on the weapons status. Drake's gonna like this. You ready? I am unarmed. But Butler, my butler, has a Sig Sauer in his shoulder holster, 2 Shrike-throwing knives in his boots, a Derringer 2-shot up his sleeve, a Garrett wire in his watch, and 3 stun grenades concealed in various pockets. Anything else, Butler? Owen, would you add anything to that collection? The Kosh, sir. Oh, yes. A good old ball-bearing Kosh stuffed down his shirt. Yugian brought the cup trembling up to his lips. Don't be alarmed, Mr. Zwan, Artemis smiled. The weapons will not be used on you. Yugian didn't seem reassured. No, continued Artemis. Butler could kill you 100 different ways without the use of his weapons, though I'm sure one would be quite sufficient. Yugian was by now thoroughly spooked. Artemis generally had that effect on people, a pale adolescent speaking with the authority and vocabulary of a very powerful adult. Yugian had heard the name Fal before. Who hadn't in the international underworld? But he'd assumed he'd be dealing with Artemis Sr., not this boy. Though the word boy hardly seemed to do this gaunt individual justice, and the giant, Butler, it was obvious that he could snap a man's backbone like a twig with those mammoth hands. Yugian was starting to think that no amount of money was worth another minute in this strange company. And now down to business, said Artemis, placing a micro recorder on the table. You answered our web advertisement. Yugian nodded, suddenly praying that this information was accurate. Yes, Master Fal, what you're looking for, I know where it is. Really? And I'm supposed to take your word for it? You could be walking me straight into an ambush. My family is not without enemies. Butler snatched a mosquito out of the air beside his employer's ear. No, said Yugian, reaching for his watch. Here, look. Artemis studied the Polaroid picture. He willed his heart to maintain a calm beat. It seemed promising, but anything could be faked these days with a PC and a flatbed scanner. The picture showed a hand reaching from layered shadows, a mottled green hand. He murmured. Explain. This woman, she is a healer near Tudo Street. She works in exchange for rice wine. All the time she drinks the rice wine. Artemis nodded. It made sense, the drinking. One of the few consistent facts his research had unearthed. He stood, pulling the creases from his white polo shirt. Very well. Lead on, Mr. Zwan. Yugian wiped the sweat from his stringy mustache. Information only. That was the agreement. I don't want any curses on my head. Butler expertly gripped the informant behind the neck. I'm sorry, Mr. Zwan, but the time when you had a choice in matters is long past. Butler steered the protesting Vietnamese man to the rented four-wheel drive. It was hardly necessary on the flat streets of Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon, as the locals still called it, but Artemis preferred to be as insulated from civilians as possible. The Jeep inched forward at a painfully slow rate, made all the more excruciating by the anticipation building in Artemis's chest. He could suppress it no longer. Could they at last be at the end of their quest? After 6 false alarms across 3 continents, could this wine-sodden healer be the gold at the end of the rainbow? Artemis almost chuckled. Gold at the end of the rainbow. He'd made a joke. Now that's something that didn't happen every day. Are you curious, or do you remember me teasing a little bit about what was going to happen here? Artemis is on a quest to discover if leprechauns are real or not, if magical underground fairies and creatures exist. And he thinks he's got a good lead. The mopeds parted like fish in a giant shoal. There seemed to be no end to the crowds. Even the alleyways were full to bursting with vendors and hagglers. Cooks dropped fish heads into wocks of hissing oil, and urchins threaded their way underfoot searching for unguarded valuables. And you kind of smell like the oil kind of heating up and maybe even getting a little smoky in the air, really crowded, really hot summer, like a market, like think the markets in like Aladdin or the word market from the book we just read, only really active, really bustling and busy, and lots of the smell of frying fish, the smell of fried rice, and it's really hot in the summer, so I wouldn't think it's all that pleasant, to be quite honest with you. Others sat in the shade, wearing out their thumbs on their Game Boys. Nguyen was sweating right through his khaki top. It wasn't the humidity. He was used to that. It was this whole cursed situation. He should have known better than to mix magic and crime. He made a silent promise that if he got out of this, he would change his ways. No more answering shady internet requests, and certainly no more consorting with the sons of European crime lords. The Jeep could only go so far. Eventually, the side streets grew too narrow for the four-wheel drive. Artemis turned to Nguyen. It seems we must proceed on foot, Mr. Zwan. Run, if you like, but expect a sharp and fatal pain between your shoulder blades, if you do. Nguyen glanced into Butler's eyes. They were a deep blue, almost black. There was no mercy in those eyes. Don't worry, he said. I won't run. They climbed down from the vehicle. 1,000 suspicious eyes followed their progress along the steaming alley. An unfortunate pickpocket attempted to steal Butler's wallet. The manservant broke the man's fingers without even looking down. They were given a wide berth after that. Berth is B-E-R-T-H. It means a wide path. Everybody moved out of their way. I think you can clearly see why. And also see why I might have mentioned Butler's a pretty cool guy. Just saying. The alley narrowed to a rutted lane. Sewage and drain pipes fed directly onto the muddy surface. Cripples and beggars huddled on rice mat islands. Most of the residents of this lane had nothing to spare, with the exception of 3. Well, demanded Artemis, where is she? Nguyen jabbed a finger toward a black triangle beneath a rusted fire escape. There, under there. She never comes out, even to buy rice spirits. She sends a runner. Now can I go? Artemis didn't bother answering. Instead, he picked his way across the puddled lane to the lee of the fire escape. He could discern furtive movements in the shadows. Butler, could you hand me the goggles? Butler plucked a set of night vision glasses from his belt and placed them in Artemis's outstretched hand. The focus motor buzzed to suit the light. Artemis fixed the glasses to his face. Everything became radioactive green. Taking a deep breath, he turned his gaze to the squirming shadows. Something squatted on a raffia mat, shifting uneasily in the almost non-existent light. Artemis fine-tuned the focus. The figure was small, abnormally so, and wrapped in a filthy shawl. Empty spirit jugs were half buried in the mud all around her. One forearm poked from the material. It seemed green, but then again, with the goggles on, so did everything else. Madam, he said, I have a proposition for you. The figure's head wobbled sleepily. Wine, she rasped, her voice like nails on a schoolboard. Wine, English wine. Artemis smiled. The gift of tongues. Check. That means she can speak different languages. Aversion to light. Check. Irish, actually. Now, about my proposition. The healer took a bony finger craftily. Wine first, then talk. Butler. The bodyguard reached into a pocket and drew out a half pint of the finest Irish whiskey. Artemis took the bottle and held it teasingly beyond the shadows. He barely had time to remove his goggles when the claw-like hand darted from the gloom to snatch the whiskey. A mottled green hand, there was no doubt. Artemis swallowed a triumphant grin. Pay our friend, Butler. In full. Remember, Mr. Zwan, this is between us. You don't want Butler to come back, do you? No, Master Fowl. My lips are sealed. They had better be, or Butler will seal them permanently. Nguyen skipped off down the alley, so relieved to be alive that he didn't even bother counting the sheaf of U.S. currency. Most unlike him. In any event, it was all there, all $20,000. Not bad for a half hour's work. Artemis turned back to the healer. Now, madam, you have something that I want. The healer's tongue caught a drop of alcohol in the corner of her mouth. Yes, Irish, sore head, bad tooth, I heal. Artemis replaced the night vision goggles and squatted to her level. I am perfectly healthy, madam. Apart from a slight dust mite allergy, and I don't think even you can do anything about that. No, what I want from you is your book. The old hag froze. Bright eyes glinted from beneath the shawl. Book? I don't know about no book. I am a healer. You want a book? Go to the library. Artemis sighed with exaggerated patience. You are no healer. You are a sprite, shog, fairy, Catalan, whichever language you prefer to use, and I want your book. For a long moment, the creature said nothing. Then she threw back the shawl from her forehead. In the green glow of the night vision goggles, her features leaped at Artemis like a Halloween mask. The fairy's nose was long and hooked under two slitted golden eyes. Her ears were pointed, and the alcohol addiction had melted her skin like putty. If you know about the book, human, she said slowly, fighting the numbing effects of the whiskey, then you know about all the magic I have in my fist. I can kill you with the snap of my fingers. Kind of reminds me of Thanos right there, huh? Artemis shrugged. I think not. Look at you. You're near dead. The rice wine has dulled your senses, reduced to healing warts. You're pathetic. I am here to save you in return for the book. What could a human want with our book? Well, that's no concern of yours. All you need to know are your options. The sprite's pointed ears quivered. Options? 1. You refuse to give us the book and we go home, leaving you to rot in this sewer. Yes, said the fairy. I'll take that option. No, don't be so eager. If we leave without the book, you will be dead in a day. A day? A day, the healer laughed. I will outlive you by a century. Even fairies tethered to the human realm can survive the ages. Not with a half pint of holy water inside them, said Artemis, tapping the now empty whiskey bottle. Did you see that coming? The fairy blanched. She turned white. Then screamed a high, keening, horrible sound. Holy water! You have murdered me, human! True, admitted Artemis. It should start to burn any minute now. The fairy poked her stomach tentatively. And the second option? Oh, we're listening now, are we? Okay, very well then. Option 2. You give me the book for 30 minutes only. Then I return your magic to you. The sprite's jaw dropped. Return my magic? It's not possible. Oh, but it is. I have in my possession 2 ampules. One, a vial of spring water from the fairy well, 60 meters below the Ring of Terra, possibly the most magical place on Earth. This will counteract the holy water. And the other? The other is a little shot of man-made magic, a virus that feeds on alcohol mixed with a growth agent. It will flush every drop of rice wine from your body, remove the dependence, and even bolster your failing liver. It'll be messy, but after a day you'll be zipping around as if you were 1,000 years old again. The sprite licked her lips. To be able to rejoin the people? Tempting. How do I know to trust you, human? You've already tricked me once already. A good point. Here's the deal. I give you the water on faith. Then, after I've had a look at the book, you get the booster. Take it or leave it. What do you think the fairy's going to do? Tune in for the next part of the chapter. It's a long one, so I'm going to cut it off at 20 minutes.